The stars were cold and distant as the shuttle drifted toward the alien world. Inside, Lena Briggs sat alone, breathing slowly through the nerves that curled in her chest like smoke. She had been to other planets before, but this one felt different, heavier. The air inside the shuttle was recycled, clean and cool, but it did nothing for the dryness in her throat. Outside the thick glass, the planet grew larger. Khartoon was a place of jagged peaks and deep valleys, with rivers that cut across the land like scars. Its sky was dark red, like rust or old blood, and the sun that lit it hung low and pale. The locals called it the Eye of Silence. Lena wasn't afraid of the planet itself. She was afraid of what waited on it. She was Earth's envoy, chosen after long debates among diplomats and officers who had never set foot off-world. They needed someone smart, calm, and strong enough to speak for humanity in front of the Karen Council. She fit the bill. But even she knew how thin that bill really was. The Karens were tall, scaled beings with eyes like knives and voices like grinding stone. Their empire stretched across dozens of systems held together by war, pride, and trade. They didn't hate humans, not exactly, but they didn't trust them either. And now, with the recent border clashes and broken treaties, that mistrust had grown sharp as a blade. As the shuttle landed, the engines groaned and dust kicked up in slow clouds. The ramp lowered with a hiss, and Lena stepped out into the heat of the afternoon. A group of Karans stood waiting, their bodies still, their eyes unreadable. At the front was High Minister Vorin, the leader of the council and the closest thing Khartoon had to a king. They exchanged polite words, translated through earpieces that buzzed softly with code. Lena smiled. Vorin did not. His jaw clicked, once, twice, then settled into something like a nod. From there they moved to the capital, a city carved into the side of a mountain, where buildings rose like spears from the rock. The ceremony was being held in the open square, under the watchful eyes of thousands. Banners hung from every ledge, painted with symbols older than any human history. The plan was simple: speeches, handshakes, maybe a few pictures. Peace talks would follow. If all went well, the two sides would agree on safe routes through space, shared research stations, and maybe, just maybe, a real alliance. But things rarely go as planned. As Lena stepped onto the stage, the crowd hushed. She raised her hand in greeting, and Vorin did the same. Behind her, flags flapped in the wind. Ahead, cameras blinked like fireflies. Then came the sound, like thunder caught in a jar. The explosion tore through the platform. Flame and shrapnel flew in all directions. People screamed, bodies fell. The sky turned black with smoke. When the smoke cleared, the stage was gone. Lena was gone. Vorin lay half buried in rubble, alive but broken. The galaxy watched in shock. Who had done this? Why? Some said the Karans wanted to scare humanity away. Others said rogue humans wanted to stop peace at any cost. What no one expected was that Earth would answer with more than words. They thought killing a human envoy would silence us. They were wrong. The news spread fast. Across Earth, people watched the footage over and over. The stage, the explosion, the broken bodies. Lena Briggs was gone. So were others. Karens, guards, diplomats. The galaxy held its breath. Governments talked. Some pulled back their ships. Others sent messages of sorrow or blame, but most waited to see what Earth would do next. Back on Earth, in a small office buried inside a military building, a man sat alone at his desk. He wore plain clothes, not a uniform. His name was Daniel Reyes. Once, he had been a soldier. Now, he worked behind a screen, watching data flow like water through glass. He had thought his war was over, but then came the call. His old commander's voice crackled through the phone. "Danny, we need you back." He didn't ask why. He already knew. They needed answers. Within hours, he was pulled into a quiet room with men and women who made big decisions. They showed him reports, videos, scans from the blast site. Nothing added up. The bomb was powerful, too clean for a local group. And the DNA found in the debris? Human and Karan both. Someone wanted war. "You're going in," one of them said, quietly. Daniel nodded. It wasn't the first time he'd done something like this, but it might be the hardest. He was given a partner. Her name was Naomi Fields. She was smart, maybe smarter than anyone else in the room. A scientist, not a fighter. She studied alien tech and spoke more languages than most people knew existed. She met him outside the base with a bag slung over her shoulder and tired eyes. "You must be Reyes," she said. "You must be Fields." They shook hands. No smiles. Their job was clear. Find out who did this and why. But they couldn't go loud. If the wrong people found out they were looking, they might never come home. They started with the data. Every second of the ceremony was recorded. Every face scanned. Every sound matched to databases. But the real clue came from a broken drive recovered in the rubble. It was damaged, but not dead. Inside were fragments of files, names half burned by fire. One name stood out, Victor Hale. No last known location, no recent records. Just a ghost. Once Hale had been a colonel. Now he was a whisper in dark places. "If he's alive," Naomi said, "he's hiding somewhere far." And that's where they went. Off the grid. Beyond the reach of law and light. To the edges of known space where only traitors, pirates, and ghosts dared to go. They traveled to a station called Nova Drift. A floating town built from scrap and hope. It hung in the cold silence between stars, spinning slowly like a toy, caught in wind. There, in the shadows of rusted hulls and flickering lights, they began to ask questions. Some people ran when they heard Hale's name. Others just stared, but one old traitor, missing an eye and full of lies, gave them something real. "Heard talk," he muttered. "Hale's working with someone new, not just humans. Someone bigger." Bigger than what? They didn't know yet. But as they walked back, through the crowded halls of Nova Drift, past aliens and ex-soldiers and lost souls, Daniel looked at Naomi and said, "This isn't just about Lena anymore." She nodded. "This is about everything." They kept walking, deeper into the dark, chasing a truth that could change the stars, or destroy them. The cold air inside Nova Drift was sharp with old metal and burnt oil. Lights flickered above the narrow halls, casting shaky shadows on the walls. People moved like ghosts, some looking for work, others hiding from it. Daniel Reyes and Naomi Fields walked through the crowd, heads down, eyes alert. They had been on the station for 2 days now, asking questions, trading favors, and learning who to trust. Not many, but enough. They met with a contact in a bar that smelled like rust and stale beer. The man's name was Jake Mullins, a former pilot with too many scars and even more debts. He didn't like coming out of hiding, but he owed someone. Who owed Daniel? "You're chasing smoke," Jake said, sipping from a cracked mug. "Victor Hale doesn't want to be found." Naomi leaned forward. "We just need to know where he's been." Jake looked at her, then at Daniel. He sighed. "Heard he passed through here 6 weeks ago. Booked passage on a freighter called the Wanderer. Destination deep space beyond the outer colonies. Why would he go there?" Daniel asked. "Because that's where the real players are," Jake said. "Not just humans, not just Karens. Something older, something quiet." He slid a small chip across the table. "This is all I got. Might help you find the ship." Naomi picked it up. "Thank you." Jake gave a tired smile. "Don't thank me yet. If you catch up with Hale, you might wish you hadn't." They left the bar and made their way back to their rented room. A tight box barely big enough for 2 beds and a broken heater. Naomi plugged the chip into her tablet. Data flowed across the screen. Flight paths, cargo logs, crew names. "The Wanderer is registered to a shell company," she said. "But it's linked to a bigger network." "Black market?" Daniel asked. "Bigger than that," she replied. "These routes don't just carry goods, they carry secrets." They packed, fast. Within hours, they were on a shuttle heading to a nearby trade hub, where they could hitch a ride to the outer systems. The trip was long, filled with silence and half-finished thoughts. As they sat in their seats watching stars blur past, Naomi finally spoke. "Do you think Lena knew what was going to happen?" Daniel didn't answer right away. When he did, his voice was low. Maybe. Maybe she hoped it wouldn't, but she still went. Why? Because she believed in something bigger than herself. Naomi looked out the window. I hope we're doing the same. They arrived at the trade hub after 2 days. It was a floating city built around an old mining station, held together by cables and luck. Ships came and went like birds over water. They found a smuggler named Lila Cruz, a woman with sharp eyes and sharper deals. She agreed to take them as far as she could for a price. You're not just tourists, she said, arms crossed. So don't play dumb. Daniel handed her a sealed drive. This should cover it. She took it, looked it over, then nodded. Fine. But if things go sideways out there, don't expect me to come back for you. They boarded her ship, the Red Fox, and left the station behind. As they moved deeper into uncharted space, the stars grew fewer, the silence thicker. Maps became guesses. Time stretched. After nearly a week they found it, an abandoned Karen outpost drifting in the dark like a corpse. It was old, its hull scarred by time and war. No lights, no movement, just silence. Naomi ran scans. There's power, weak but there. Daniel checked his gear. Then we're not alone. They docked carefully, moving through the airlock with guns ready and hearts pounding. Inside, the place was frozen in time. Bloodstains marked the walls. Bodies, long dead, lay where they fell. The air was thin, cold, and full of dust. They moved, slowly, step by step, until they reached what looked like a command center. On a broken console, a file remained, damaged but recoverable. Naomi worked fast. The screen flickered, then showed a short video. Lena Briggs appeared, pale and serious. If you're seeing this, she said, then I'm already gone. But listen closely. The attack wasn't just about us. It was about control, about fear. Someone wants us to hate each other. Don't let them win. The screen cut to static. Daniel stared at it. She knew, Naomi whispered, and she still came. Outside, in the dark, something moved. Someone else was here waiting. The sound was soft, like a boot dragging across dust. Daniel Reyes froze, hand tightening on his gun. Naomi Fields stopped typing. Her breath caught in her throat. They were not alone. From the dark hallway behind them came another sound. Metal, scraping against metal. Slow, careful. Daniel motioned with his head. They had to move. Now. Naomi grabbed the drive from the console, slipping it into her pocket. She stood and followed him out of the command center, stepping over broken chairs and shattered screens. The air was thick with silence, broken only by the hum of distant machines still clinging to life. The place was dying, but not dead. As they moved through the hallways, shadows stretched along the walls like ghosts watching them go. Every corner could hide someone, or something. Then came the voice. You shouldn't be here. It echoed through, the halls rough and low. Human. Daniel raised his weapon, scanning the darkness ahead. We're not looking for trouble, he called back. A laugh followed. Short. Bitter. Doesn't matter what you're looking for, you found it. Before he could respond, a bright light cut through the dark. Blinding. Daniel threw up a hand and pulled Naomi behind cover just as a shot cracked through the air. The bullet hit the wall beside them, sending sparks flying. He returned fire, short bursts aimed at the source of the light. Footsteps scrambled away. We need to get out, Naomi said, voice tight. Daniel nodded. This way. They ran down, a side corridor, boots slapping against cold metal. More shots rang out behind them, punching holes in the walls. One grazed the side of Daniel's arm, burning like fire. They reached an emergency stairwell, sliding down rusted steps 2 at a time. The deeper they went, the darker it got. Finally, they burst into a storage bay. Crates lined the walls, old supplies stacked high. A single ship sat docked in the far corner, a small Karen shuttle patched with scrap metal and bad welds. Someone had been using this place and still was, From behind a stack of crates, a figure stepped forward. Tall, armored, face hidden under a hood. "Stop," the figure said, voice sharp, "or I shoot." Daniel didn't lower his gun. "Who are you?" The figure took another step. "I should be asking you that." Naomi stepped forward slowly, hands visible. "We're trying to find the truth about Lena Briggs's death." The figure paused, then slowly lowered their weapon. "I knew her," the figure said. Daniel and Naomi exchanged looks. The figure pulled back their hood, revealing a young woman, human, with tired eyes and a scar running down her cheek. "My name is Ellie Morse," she said. "I was part of the security team. I was supposed to be on that stage." She looked away. "But I wasn't." Naomi frowned. "You think you were meant to die too?" Ellie nodded. "I was lucky, got delayed. When I heard what happened, I came here, wanted to know why." Daniel stepped closer. "Did you find anything?" Ellie walked to a crate and opened it. Inside were pieces of armor, torn and burned, parts of weapons, and something else. DNA samples. "I ran tests," she said. "Some of this blood isn't human, or Karen." Naomi took a sample and scanned it. Her eyes widened. "This is from both species," she whispered. "Mixed." Daniel looked at Ellie. "Someone made this bomb together." Ellie nodded. "Not just one side, both." The weight of it settled between them. Then from behind came the sound of boots again. More than before. Daniel turned fast. "We've got company," Ellie cursed under her breath. "They found us." "Who?" Naomi asked. Ellie looked toward the ship. "The ones who don't want anyone to know the truth." Daniel grabbed Naomi's arm. "We leave, now." They ran toward the shuttle, bullets hitting the floor behind them. Ellie fired back, covering their escape. As they climbed aboard, Ellie shouted, "Punch it!" The engines roared to life. The shuttle lifted off just as the first shooters broke. Into the bay. Through the rear camera, they saw figures raise their weapons. Then, fire. The shuttle shook as a blast hit the back. Warning lights flashed red. "We're not going to make it," Naomi yelled. Daniel looked at the controls. "Then we fly faster." The shuttle shot forward, leaving the outpost behind. In the distance, stars blinked cold and silent. Truth was out there, and so were the ones who wanted it buried. The shuttle shuddered as it broke free from the outpost's gravity. Alarms blinked red across the control panel. One engine was damaged. Fuel levels dropped fast. Daniel Reyes kept his hands tight on the controls. Sweat ran down his temple. Behind him, Naomi Fields checked the data drive they had recovered. Ellie Morse sat near the back, breathing hard, clutching a wound on her arm. They had escaped, but just barely. "We need to get back," Daniel said. "Before someone else finds us." Naomi looked up from the screen. "This data, it could change everything." Ellie groaned, pressing a cloth to her bleeding arm. "Then we better make sure it gets seen." The ride home was rough. The ship jolted through space, dodging debris and hiding from passing ships. They couldn't risk being tracked. Every jump brought them closer to Earth, but also closer to danger. 2 days later, they landed at a hidden base in the mountains of New Mexico. No flags, no signs. Just concrete walls and guards with quiet eyes. Inside, doctors took Ellie away. Daniel and Naomi were met by 2 men in dark suits. "You're lucky to be alive," one of them said. "Luck had nothing to do with it," Daniel replied. He handed over the drive. "Everything we found is in there. Proof that both humans and Karans were involved in the bombing." The man took it carefully like it was fire in his hand. "You know what this means?" he asked. Naomi nodded. "It means the war isn't just out there. It's already started here." The other man spoke for the first time. "The council needs to decide what to do next." "What does that mean?" Daniel asked. "It means," the first man said, "that truth doesn't always bring peace." Back in Washington, the Interstellar Council gathered behind closed doors. Leaders from Earth's major powers sat in silence as the data was played on the screen. Maps, Records, DNA reports, Lena's final message. When it ended, no one clapped. No one cheered. A woman named Marcia Ellis, head of the council, stood slowly. If we release this, it will cause panic, blame, maybe even war. Another leader leaned forward. But if we don't, we betray Lena's death, and we let those responsible walk free. Voices rose. Some argued for full disclosure. Others wanted silence. Finally, Ellie Morse, still pale from blood loss, walked into the room. She looked at the council. I was supposed to die on that stage, too. I didn't. Now I carry their secrets, and if you don't tell the truth, more people will die. Silence followed. Mrs. Ellis sighed. We'll release part of it, not all. Enough to show the galaxy we're not blind, and so they did. Across Earth, news stations broadcast the partial findings. Protests began. Some called for justice. Others called for revenge. Alien governments watched closely. The Charon Council sent a message. They wanted answers. Earth offered a meeting. Neutral ground. No weapons. Only words. But not everyone wanted peace. In the shadows, Victor Hale's name surfaced again. Rumors spread. Sightings. Old friends coming out of hiding. Someone was watching, waiting, preparing. Weeks passed. Daniel and Naomi were given new orders. To stay quiet, to keep working, to find the rest of the truth. One night, as Daniel walked through the halls of the base, he saw Ellie standing alone near a window. You okay? He asked. She didn't look at him. I used to think this was about Lena, about justice. He waited. Now she looked at him. But it's bigger than that. He nodded. It always was. Outside, the stars burned cold and bright. Truth had been spoken, but not everyone was ready to hear it. The frozen moon hung in space like a pearl lost in the dark. Its surface was cracked and silent, covered in thick ice and windless cold. Far from the eyes of war, it had been chosen as the meeting ground for something rare. Peace talks between Earth and the Charon Council. The agreement had not come easy. After the partial truth was revealed, both sides had stood at the edge of war. But neither wanted to fall. So they agreed to meet. One last time, under strict rules. No weapons, no armies, only words. But someone didn't want peace. On the surface, inside a tall dome built to keep out the cold, leaders gathered. Diplomats, soldiers, and scientists sat at long tables watching each other with tired eyes. Behind them stood guards, not for battle, but for fear. Daniel Reyes and Naomi Fields were there too, not as diplomats but as watchers. They knew what lay beneath the surface of politics. They had seen the bombs, the blood, the lies. They also knew that Victor Hale was still out there, somewhere. As the talks began, the tension was thick. Voices rose and fell. Old wounds were reopened. Trust was thin. Then came the first sign that something was wrong. A power flicker. Short. Sharp. Lights dimmed for just a second, Naomi noticed. That wasn't normal. Daniel nodded. He turned to the head of security, a current officer named Ralvex. Check all exits now. Ralvex gave a slow nod. His people moved fast. Outside, snow blew across the landing zone. Ships stood quiet. Guards patrolled in heavy coats, but one of them did not belong. Inside the dome, Ellie Morse walked among the crowd. She had come to honor Lena's memory not as a soldier, but as a witness. She watched the faces, the movements, the way some people avoided eye contact. And then she saw him. Victor Hale. Not dead. Not hiding. Here. He stood near the back, dressed in plain clothes, blending in with the staff. His face was older, thinner, but his eyes were sharp, full of purpose. Ellie's breath caught. She reached for her earpiece. Daniel, she whispered. He's here. Before anyone could move, the dome lights went out completely. Darkness, swallowed everything. Then came the sound of gunfire. Not from outside, but from within. Chaos broke loose. People screamed. Chairs fell. Bodies ran. Daniel grabbed Naomi and pulled her down behind a table. "Ralvex!" he shouted. "Secure the leaders!" Ralvex roared orders in his native tongue. Karen guards formed a tight circle around their council members. From the shadows, more shots rang out. Smoke filled the air. Someone hit the emergency lights, but they only flickered weakly. Ellie spotted Hale again, moving toward the main table. He had a gun and a target. She ran. No plan. No backup. Just action. She tackled him before he could fire. They crashed to the floor. His gun skidded away. They struggled. He was strong, older, but not weak. "You don't understand," he growled. "This is the only way." "What way?" she hissed. "More death?" He laughed, breath ragged. "Only through fire can we be free." She punched him hard. Once. Twice. His grip loosened. Guards arrived. Pulled him up. Cuffed him. It was over. For now. Outside, the storm howled. Inside, the leaders were safe. Barely. Daniel helped Naomi stand. "We stopped this one," he said. "But this won't be the last." She looked at Hale being dragged away. "No, it won't." Ralvex stepped forward, jaw tight. "This attack, it proves something." Daniel met his gaze. "What's that?" Ralvex spoke slowly. "That peace is not given. It must be earned." Silence followed. Then, one by one, the leaders returned to the table. Talks would continue, because if they stopped now, the real war would begin, and they had already lost too much to let that happen. Months passed. The stars stayed cold. The galaxy kept turning. The attack on the peace talks had shocked the world. It had also changed minds. Some said peace was a lie. Others said it was worth the risk. In the end, the talks didn't stop. They continued. Slower now. Harder. But they continued. Victor Hale was locked away. Not killed. Not hidden. Put on trial. His face filled screens across Earth and beyond. People saw him not as a hero or a monster, but as a warning. He had believed that war would make humanity stronger, that fear would unite them, but all he had done was show how fragile peace could be, and how many were willing to fight for it. Daniel Reyes watched the trial from a quiet room in a military base far from the noise. Beside him, Naomi Fields read through reports. "They're calling you a hero," she said. Daniel shook his head. "I just did my job." She smiled a little. "Your job used to be sitting behind a desk." "Not anymore," he said. He had been given a new role, leading a small team meant to stop threats before they became wars. Spies, diplomats, soldiers, all working together in the dark. Naomi had gone back to research, but not alone. Her name was now tied to the events on Cartoon. Her work was no longer just science, it was policy, history, hope. Ellie Morse had left the army, but not the fight. She traveled across Earth, speaking at schools, bases, and spaceports. She told Lena's story, not just how she died, but how she lived. On Cartoon, a statue was built in Lena Briggs' honor. Carved from black stone, it stood tall in the capital city. Below it, engraved in both human writing and Karen script, were her last words. "We do not speak only for ourselves. We speak for those who have yet to find their voice." It was more than a memorial. It was a promise. Back on Earth, the Interstellar Council made a bold move. They sent a new envoy, not just a human, but a joint delegation with a Karen diplomat at the center. It was a message. Trust was still possible, but not easy, not safe, not guaranteed. Space remained dangerous. Old wounds did not heal fast. There were still groups that wanted war, still voices that whispered lies in the dark. But now, there was something else too. A belief that one person could make a difference. That truth, even when buried, could rise again, and that silence was never the answer. As the new envoy stepped onto alien soil, cameras recorded every step. Ships hovered above. Leaders waited. In the crowd, unseen but watching, Daniel Reyes stood beside Naomi. "Do you think this will work?" she asked. He looked at the stage, at the flags, at the faces of those waiting. "No idea," he said. "But we'll keep trying. Because that was what humans did. They tried, even when afraid, even when hurt, even when the stars seemed too far. They thought killing a human envoy would silence us. They were wrong. Now, the galaxy knew. Humanity had not just one voice but many, and none of them would ever stop speaking.